Good morning. The process of receiving an education, of being educated, for me, inadvertently introduced me to my two major life themes. Elementary school was, I don't retain many memories, but it was the 6th grade. I have two events in the 6th grade that I consider pivotal to my evolution, the life themes of first magic. And when I say magic, I don't mean to conjure a trick. I mean the magic of life, the wonders of existence. And this theme, magic, occurred to me first amongst the two. And I remember events in the 6th grade. The first one may be considered a little mundane, but the impact on me was profound. And that was halfway through the 6th grade, the first time I wrote 1960 on my paper. I had perhaps my first epiphany, because I had received all my previous education, all my earlier years. I always dated the papers somewhere in the 1950s. So, 1960, at first I was incredulous. How can this even happen? But it probably was the first time that change really had a profound impact on me. And most notably, of greatest consequence, was how I dealt with this change. I remember, after pausing, I accepted it with great enthusiasm, for I was beginning to see at this tender age that change, while inevitable, offered opportunities. And the next event, that same 6th grade, those of us that grew up with the California education, and probably the rest of the baby boomers, and probably continues today, we were subjected to many tests. Standardized testing was a way of life for us. And of course, we as children didn't care for it much, because we didn't understand that the impetus for these tests had to do with crucial allotment of resources to the school district. So the school, the teachers, administration were very aware of the importance. It meant how much money they could get based on, sometimes directly based on, student scores. So one of these standardized tests, it was on mathematics. And I was at best at this time not particularly adept at math. Never really had thought about it much. But on the math test, I remember my teacher's surprise and shock when she called my name as the top scorer in our class. I remember the class quieting. I could even hear a few oohs. And I could feel from a few Asian students that I had in my class that something had gone terribly wrong. After all, they were the ones that were destined to be doctors and lawyers from my small agricultural coastal Central California community. And the rest of us, well, I was the son of a civil service worker, so probably that was the top of the scale for me to follow. And both my parents were civil servants, so I was probably being prepared for a career in civil service. So what the magic in this event was that I was number one, the center of attention. And to my best recollection, this never occurred in the rest previously or afterwards in the rest of my academic career. And it felt really good. It didn't last long, but it was brief. And to me, it was a magic moment. Number one, it's something, cause for celebration. And I remember not even going home and sharing it, keeping it inside to savor. And at the same time, something magic that wasn't directly related to my education, my schooling, was beginning the exploration, spontaneous, self-motivated, without encouragement, without models, but beginning my lifelong affection for meditation. Somehow, I always ask myself the question, what's the point? Talking about my education and testing, and what's the point? And with this motivation, I took what's the point and began to examine very early, unsupervised, unencouraged, unsupported, began examining the big questions, the important questions in life around me and life within me. Junior high school was I have no memories of junior high school. What I do remember is my extracurricular activities. I was a competitive swimmer and an enthusiast of long bike rides. Something, by the way, that has lasted with me till today. High school, the first year in high school, again, not much of academic significance, but I did continue with my swimming and engaged in another sport, another water sport, water polo. Well, in swimming, I never competed for gold or silver. My skill level was aimed at bronze. And securing a bronze medal meant just as much to me as my more gifted teammates that were swimming for silver and gold. After all, my bronze medal would give some points to our team standing, so it has significance. But most significant of my continued swimming was, number one, it kept me in condition, got me in shape for water polo. But most importantly, the repetitive physical activity allowed me to release my mind. Swimming, your head's always underwater until you breathe. I created huge fantasy worlds. And maybe this accounts for my propensity to bronze medal. Maybe if I would have focused more on rigorous training, that I may have been a better swimmer. But thank God for the beginning of my rich life of imagination. It was magic times in the water. In water polo, I fared better than in the swimming world. I was pretty good enough as a freshman to make the starting varsity team. And I remember receiving a varsity letter after my freshman year. And I was on track to be a 4-year varsity letterman in water polo. And at that time in my world, this was a big event and goal worth striving for. To walk around as a senior with in my letterman sweater with 4 stripes on the sleeve, signifying 4 years of varsity lettering in the sport. Well, I couldn't think of a much better future. But my life was to radically change at the end of that year. We inherited a stepfather, and that's the best way I could put it. All of a sudden we had a stepfather who dragged us to Pago Pago, American Samoa. And here I was, from my small Central California, basically agricultural community, transplanted to the middle of the South Pacific, in the land, on an island of gentle giants. And 2 events made a huge impact, in addition to the immersion into a beautiful Polynesian culture, which has served me well and made an incredible impact on a 13, 14-year-old. And the 2 events that really stand out in my mind have to do with not what happened in the classroom, but the uniqueness of going to school in Pago Pago. On the school bus, there was a big, bold sign that said, "No beer drinking in government bus." And I thought, this is really an amusing sign for school bus, because it was basically elementary, junior, and senior high school students. But bold letters, "No beer drinking." And in the classroom, another big sign, "You must wear something under your lava lava." Well, a lava lava is a Polynesian sarong, basically a bolt of cloth wrapped around the waist. And I'll never forget the day a boy was called to the blackboard to write something by the young teacher. And his friend pulled his lava, and he's standing there naked. And everybody, the Samoans, laughed so hard. And he didn't rush to cover up. And there was 2 or 3 Western students. And needless to say, it was a bit of a shock. But we followed along with our Samoan classmates and got a good giggle. And the magic in this event, or both of these events, was not to take myself so seriously, not to take the culture that I came from, because I saw it up against an alternative view of things, and started to be flexible, but even at the age when most start to become rigid. I think we get set in our ways at an incredibly young age. The buoyancy and excitement of childhood wears off into redundancy and boredom and being pounded into being a round peg in a square hole and being forced to fit. So the magic, again, coming into leaving Samoa and coming to Hawaii for my last 2 years of high school. Again, my main criteria in the conditions of the high school in Hawaii that I found was survival, to keep a low profile and just grind it through. But at the same time, while educational opportunities seemed quite bleak, I had an opportunity to become a true waterman. I was already a swimmer. I swam quite well, but had limited opportunities to be in the ocean. Now, honestly, I spend more time, me and my friends spent much more time in the ocean than we did in the classroom. We played hooky, hardly ever went. I went to school just enough to get by, but meanwhile, scuba diving, free diving, open ocean swimming, surfing taught me to love and appreciate the ocean, to accumulate the true skills, body surfing, to just have a pair of fins and you in the water, the communion, it was pure magic, and to understand and respect currents, waves, sea life, the dangers of the deep, the dangers that the ocean presented, to learn how to be prepared in the truest sense as an all-around waterman was pure magic. Sitting on a surfboard in the ocean waiting for the next wave. I didn't think it could get better than that. And I still don't. and the uniqueness that each wave would be different. Each spot, each surf spot offered different challenges, different rewards. So, a rich water life was the gift of my high school days in Hawaii. And then, almost barely was able to get accepted to the local university, University of Hawaii. Just had the grades, just passed the basic requirements and had the grades. So I came in as a pretty underwhelming student with a checkered academic background. But I quickly embraced the opportunities. I found myself as a generalist. In those first couple of years of pure heaven, taking a class here, taking a class there, and pursuing. I wanted to know something about everything. And I was really excited. Well, the day of reckoning, the third year, the universe was pushing to me to choose a major. And I had been all over the map. I had like communication classes, I had geology classes, I had sociology, political science, just run the gamut and enjoyed learning something about every one of them. It came time to choose a major. And history had captivated me, but I also was a big fan of English literature, world lit, which were English majors at that time. Well, fortunately for me, a day of magic came because I discovered a discipline called American Studies, tailor-made, as it turns out for me, with its combination of literature, political science, history, and best of all, popular culture. There was a class on rock and roll. Can you imagine my glee? Because I was already a big music fan. So, the magic of discovering an eclectic major that allowed me to continue with bits and pieces, grab something there, blend, and to put them all together, to try to create a coherency out of chaos. A recurring theme in my life, this search for order within disorder. At this time in my education, I had to work. I wasn't good enough to qualify. I didn't even apply for any scholarships. Maybe there was something available for me, but never was encouraged by a teacher and never did pursue those opportunities. So, coming from a poor family, I had no financial support from my mother. She just couldn't support me. And I started working. The same, I had work the same day I started school. So my education was half work day, half school day. And then continued through my whole education, the rest of my university career. Well, I discovered house painting. And house painting, like swimming before, it was rigorous, repetitive exercise. And I learned to set my mind free. I could paint with 10 or 15% of my attention and paint quite well, paint houses, and be able to release my mind. So I continued with my ocean life as well. And my spiritual life, almost as if to contravene my physicality, working so hard, playing hard. Meditation offered an arena where my body could relax, but my mind had the same freedom that my ocean life, my painting life offered. And I was still wrestling with those same big questions that I'd been wrestling with since the 6th grade. What's it all about? What's the meaning of life? What's the point? Again, the key question. But I was, even though my condition was hardly optimal, working, going to school, surfing and swimming, rigorous meditation. By now, I learned more about it. Zen was already appealing to me by my university years. But the commonality was the magic of letting my mind go while my body took care of the dreary work of getting by, which is working, and as well as the playing my ocean life, because I always knew that I needed to balance these two. I was juggling work, education, ocean sports, and my meditation practice. And I was able to do it quite well. But again, the commonality for all four things was a freedom that I could, internal freedom that I could experience, no matter how complex or dire my personal situation was. Life was good, I could say that. And magic surrounded me, the magic of life surrounded me and overwhelmed me, and was deeply recognized continually by me. So I did quite well in my undergraduate studies. And then I was asked to consider graduate school. And again, my master's degree reminded me much like my junior high school intermediary between BA, bachelor's degree, and a PhD. And it went very smoothly. And already I didn't like academic writing. I could do it, but it just seemed so pedantic and so unnecessary. I wanted to, if I did writing, I wanted to be creative writing, not limited to strict formats. So I didn't write a master's thesis. I took extra classes, which suited me well because being a generalist, I got opportunities to take more classes. I loved seminars. I loved sitting with the teacher and being expected to participate, to discuss, sitting around the table with 10 or 12 students and a teacher, and being expected. And my input was appreciated as I appreciated the input of those around me. And I didn't set the world on fire in my master's program, but I had a 3.0 average and was good enough. But my enthusiasm for education, for learning, was appreciated by a few professors, and I was encouraged to continue for a PhD. Now I hit a roadblock. They challenge you early in your PhD because I had taken so many master's degree classes. I didn't have many classes to take my PhD level. I completed them all mostly. So I had to start focusing on a dissertation almost from day one. And learning what a dissertation is. A dissertation is a unique contribution to scholarship. And I hit a roadblock because already by this time I highly doubted that anything was original, that everything that could be and would be and will be had been done. And I didn't have any misgivings that I was going to somehow turn the tables and come up with this really unique perspective. So I was stuck. What I did is I started reading dissertations. Dozens and dozens of dissertations. Spent a lot of time reading dissertations, seeing how to use. And I was introduced to the necessity of finding citations, finding experts who supported your unique contribution. So now we have a unique contribution, but we have to find scholarship. The dissertation basically was an argument which we were tasked to prove. And unlike my undergraduate school where I learned something about everything, all of a sudden I had to start learning that would require me to focus and learn more and more about less and less. To specialize. I'd been a generalist, successfully been a generalist, and now I was being herded into being a specialist. And on top of my problem about doubting not only my ability, but anybody's ability to come up with anything unique, as much less a unique contribution to scholarship, I had to quickly decide whether I was going to put the time and energy into writing this meaningless drivel that was necessary for me. 4 or 5 years of focusing all my efforts to complete this, to get the credential. Well, let me tell you, I went through this process twice, and both times I ended up with an ABD, all but dissertation. Because both times I made the conscious decision that the time I was spending writing drivel and trying to force myself, to pigeonhole myself into these narrow confines of scholarship were counterproductive to the personal, spiritual opening to the universe around me. And both times, both in Hawaii and years later in Taiwan, when I was in another PhD program, I ended up with the same epiphany. That magic for me was opening up. In the attempts to be a Renaissance man, or what I envisioned a Renaissance man to be, someone who knew something about everything. But the silver lining of all this academic struggle was that I was introduced to my second life theme, and that was mythology. Of all my studies, of everything I read, mythology, the origins of myth, the universalization of myths, common life views, consistent and popping up in different areas of the world, completely diverse peoples, racially, in every way that people can be diverse. But there was common themes, commonalities, myths. And this is what I walked away from my experience in university, was the love of mythology and myths. And the one that stuck with me, that I spent most of the time on, was the mythology surrounding heaven and hell. And I was quickly able to see that both heaven and hell were simply metaphors for the condition of life. Hell exists with us in our daily lives, as does heaven. And it was this coming to terms with the real condition of life that led to my spiritual, that contributed so much to my spiritual growth, my journey from progressive awakening to permanent awakening. So you never know where the magic is going to come from. Magic, like everything else, is in the eye of the beholder. The sense that the universal myths provide a comfort to someone who always felt alone among the many, to see the commonalities. So you don't know, you never know what your blessings will be from any endeavor, but you will always keep in mind to be so grateful for life and the opportunities provided.